By that night, news of Palmer's death had traveled back to the camp. Spirits were low, and Colonel Forbin felt devastated. Even though he had only been in Gamehenge for one day, he had already developed a deep hatred for Wilson. He wanted desperately to help the revolutionaries, but without Palmer, it seemed hopeless. He wandered slowly through the camp and passed Aaron Wolf, sitting by the fire with Rutherford, who had returned that afternoon. He walked on and soon found himself outside of Tila's hut. Forbin knocked and walked in. Tila sat behind a makeshift desk in the center of a room that was littered with small cages containing spotted stripers, a tiny three-legged breed of animal. The unit monster sat in the corner. The colonel took a step toward Tila and spoke. "I needed to come here tonight," he said, "to tell you that I've fallen in love with you." He looked to her eyes for approval, but her face remained frozen in an expressionless stare. An awkward blanket of silence fell over the room and hung for a long moment, before being shattered by the sound of the door swinging violently open. It was Rutherford the Brave. The ironclad knight rushed across the room and gripped the throats of Tila and the unit monster in each of his mighty hands. They struggled to break free, but even the unit monster was no match for Rutherford's power, and soon it was over. The bodies fell to the floor in a lifeless heap. Colonel Forbin stepped forward from where he stood in the corner, unable to contain his confusion and rage, and screamed, "Why?" His question was answered by Aaron Wolf, who had quietly slipped through the doorway during the confusion. She was a spy, he said, and explained to Forbin that she had been sending information to Wilson using the spotted stripers as carriers. Roger's death had aroused his suspicion, and Palmer's had confirmed it. The colonel stood in silence, in a world that had turned upside down so many times that he no longer knew which way was up. It had all seemed so simple when he first arrived. Good versus evil, and of course he had sided with good as he had done all of his life. And now he stood and stared into the eyes of Aaron Wolf, and he saw evil. The entire picture began to seem like an enormous puzzle with one piece missing, and the colonel knew what that piece was. Within 24 hours, he said to Aaron Wolf, "You will have the Helping Friendly book." And even as the words were leaving his lips, he found himself running out the door and into the forest, not towards Prussia, but toward the great mountain looming in the distance.